Well, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our From Renter to Homeowner webinar. The objective for today's webinar is to provide you with guidance on how to make that leap from renter to homeowner. I'm Corby Gage. I'm the Executive Director of Coastal Housing Partnership. And with us today is also Kim Pascage, Program Manager for Coastal Housing Partnership. And we're delighted to have two real estate professionals with us today to share their expertise. Devin Wong with Village Properties and Kevin Cravens with Guarantee Rate. Both Kevin and Devin are part of Coastal Housing Partnership's network. And as part of this network, these two real estate professionals make it easier for you to become a homeowner by reducing your closing costs associated with your purchase. And they do this for employees of companies that are part of Coastal Housing Partnership. So the format for today's webinar is I'll be asking our panelists some questions about the process of going from renter to homeowner. And the remainder of our time together will be for you to get your questions answered. That's really important for us to address your questions. So the webinar format means that your cameras are off and your microphones are off. So if you do have questions, and we hope you do, please put them in the Q&A, and you can ask them anonymously if you like. Feel free to put your questions in at any time they come to you during the webinar, and we will be answering those toward the end of our time together. Kim will be fielding these questions, and so you will get those questions answered. We'll be doing that verbally instead of writing those answers in the Q&A. And if you have any technical difficulties, any questions, please put them in the chat, and Kim will be monitoring that and will be able to help you with that. We're going to be recording today's webinar, so we can send you the link to that recording after the webinar is over. So before we hear from our panelists, I want to remind you of one of the benefits that are available to you because you are an employee of a member company of Coastal Housing Partnership. We have partnered with local real estate professionals who provide you with savings when you're purchasing a home. So this is whether you're a first-time home buyer or not. These professionals include lenders, real estate agents, home inspection firms, a moving company, and some residential developers. Generally, having these professionals as part of your home buying team can save you up to 50% or more on your closing costs. So you can find the list of the network partners that we work with on our website, which is coastalhousing.org. And of course, as I mentioned, both Devin and Kevin are part of this network and would offer you savings on your closing costs. So let's get started. Devin, would you please introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Devin Wong. I've been a realtor with Village Properties for 8 years. I came to Santa Barbara in 2001 to go to UCSB. I got my degree in mechanical engineering. I did that for 10 years. And as soon as I switched into real estate, one of the first things I did was join the Coastal Housing Partnership so that I could help folks that were in my shoes, the local workforce, try to get their piece of home ownership in Santa Barbara.
And I remember the day you joined, Devin. We were delighted to have you. Kevin, I also remember the day you joined. Would you introduce yourself?
My name's Kevin Cravens. I'm with Guaranteed Rate. I am starting my 35th year in mortgage lending. Don't do the math, it doesn't work out for me. I came into the mortgage business in Santa Barbara fresh out of college and had done only one job, one career my entire adult life. So I can't talk about much else other than financing for homeowners. And I'm thrilled to be here today to help you guys out. Corby, I can't remember how many decades we've worked together, but it's been a long time.
Yes, it has. We should stop counting at some point.
Yeah.
So, well, let's get started on our questions. Want to kind of address sometimes what we call the elephant in the room, and what we get asked so frequently, is now a good time to buy a home? So Kevin, with current housing prices and current interest rates, should someone wait to buy, or is this a good time to go ahead and think about buying a home?
Well, we get that question a lot. The best time to buy is when you're financially, mentally, emotionally ready to buy a home. There is never a bad time to get prepared to buy a home, because oftentimes the right house will pop up if you're not ready. So it's nice to be prepared in advance. Rising interest rates have certainly dampened some of the enthusiasm we've seen in the housing market. And anecdotally, earlier this year, a lot of folks were out there getting pre-approved and ready to purchase in anticipation of when rates do eventually come back down, that they want to try to maybe get in before the feeding frenzy starts again. And some of those folks that bought earlier this year have actually been able to negotiate deals they wouldn't have been able to get or won't be able to get in the future. So the silver lining to higher housing or higher mortgage rates has been that it's given many buyers the opportunity to maybe take their time, not have to write the offer when they go out to the curb after being in an open house and competing with 12 or 20 other offers. Now they have time to, inspect the property a little bit, maybe talk to their realtor about, credits that might come later on, things like that. So, is it a good time to buy? The best time to buy is when you're ready. It could be 6 months from now, it could be a year from now, but I don't think there's any hurt in getting out there and getting yourself emotionally, financially, and mentally prepared to do it, whether it's a year or two from now or tomorrow.
Really good point. Devin, anything to add to that from your perspective?
Yeah, like Kevin said, we do get asked this question a lot, and my answer is generally the same. I do think timing is important, but less so timing the housing market and more so the timing in your life. So if you're financially prepared, you've got your ducks in a row, and maybe more importantly, you're at a place where you can hunker down for 5 years, 10 years plus. That generally is a better time to go into the housing market rather than a situation where, yeah, I'm going to be leaving town in 2 years. Well, it's probably not a good time to jump into the housing market. But if you can be there for a while and ride out some of the ebbs and flows of the market, then yeah, I'm all for it.
Okay, great perspectives there. So sounds like key takeaway is it's always a good time to get prepared, so that when things get to the point in the market where you can get in, or where you are financially prepared if you aren't ready now, that you have taken those steps instead of waiting for whatever it is that you're thinking of, a promotion or interest rates to drop, and then starting to get prepared to start that process now, and to really find a lender, find a real estate agent to be on your team and be in that readiness position. That's great advice. So Devin, what are some of the advantages of home ownership? Why should someone make that step?
Well, if you're jumping into just a traditional, single family home or a condo that you're going to live in, to me, one of the biggest benefits is just, having a place that you can really call home. You don't have to worry about the landlord's rules. You can paint, you can remodel, you can really make it a space that's all your own. So I think that's one of the biggest things. Beyond that, there's the financial side where you start to build equity. Your property can appreciate over time. You start paying down the principal on your loan. You really start putting money back into your pocket rather than sending it out in rent in every month. And then along with other things, like there's some tax benefits here and there. But I think big picture, it's just that place to call home, and it just sets a new baseline in your life. You're like, here, I got my house. I'm good. We can move on from here.
You're not going to get a 30-day notice to that your landlord is renting to someone else, and you've got to find something to move into.
It does happen.
Yeah. Right. Well, so Devin, what would you say would be the first step in moving from renter to homeowner?
Yeah, well, typically when renters come to us, us being realtors, any good realtor, in my opinion, is going to point you to a lender pretty much right off the bat. And that's for a couple of reasons. The primary one is you just want to get your budget. You know, what you can't go shopping without knowing how much you have to spend, right? And like Kevin said, it's good to just make sure everything's in order. If there's any red flags in the initial process, well, it gives you time to smooth those out before your dream house comes along. So, um, I think starting with a lender is generally, the best advice.
That's a really good point. I guess you don't want to set your sights too high or too low and not really know what you can afford and be disappointed if it's something that you can't afford. So
Mhm.
sounds like that first step of seeing a lender is a good one. That seems a little bit contrary to what we do with other things. We usually find what we want to buy and then figure out how to pay for it. So this is the other way around. You meet with a lender first. That's pretty much industry standard, and then figure out what you can afford from there. So, Kevin, in addition to the real estate agent thinking that it's a good idea to have that pre-approval from a local lender, what are some of the reasons why someone should meet with a lender sooner rather than later?
Well, a big part of what we do when we first get to know you, and we will get to know you very, very well, we're going to ask intimate questions you wouldn't necessarily share with your best friends or other family members. How's your credit? What is your income level? What's your comfort range as far as a bottom line expense you think you can afford to have go out each month for housing expense? And we're going to ask you questions that help us put you on a path to getting into something that will be affordable when it does come time to buy a home. It's so easy on this side of the computer or the desk to say that you're qualified and this is affordable to you. But what we want to do is really find out if you really can afford to make a monthly housing expense as a homeowner and still have a lifestyle afterwards. You can still go buy groceries and go out and have vacations and do things that you might not be able to do if you've gotten yourself bogged down with a bigger payment than you really could afford. And again, affordability and qualifying are two different things. Sometimes I think we can qualify consumers and home buyers for more house than they think they can do, and sometimes even should do. Lending guidelines have gotten pretty generous in the ability for consumers to qualify for more mortgage than I think a lot of people give themselves credit for. Doesn't mean they should necessarily go out and get the biggest mortgage they can get, but they certainly sometimes can qualify for more than they can, I'm going to air quote here, afford. I'll have consumers sometimes, and many lenders will say that they are paying $3,000 in rent right now, and that feels comfortable, and that they think they can afford, let's say, $4,000 or $4,500 in rent as a homeowner. And I'll say, hey, why don't we take the difference between your rent that you're paying now and what you think you can afford, let's say 3,000 versus 4,500, and that differential, let's set aside that you can't touch each month for maybe 1 or 2 or 3 months. And if you were able to do that, that's a great experiment. It worked out. We've saved some down payment funds or whatever. We've set some money aside. Or if it didn't work out and you found that you couldn't, afford to buy groceries or go out and have fun, it was kind of a good way to find out that we really maybe shouldn't be in that price range. So again, we from a lending standpoint can tell you what you can qualify for, but only you as a home buyer can kind of figure out what you can afford.
That's a great test. So you're kind of creating that, simulating what it would look like to be a homeowner with that payment. That's a great idea because I think oftentimes these numbers feel a little elusive and can we really afford that? Um, so when you are getting someone pre-approved for a loan and you're giving them that payment, you're saying, you can qualify for $4,500. Sometimes I hear people saying, well, they stopped in that process because they go, oh, I'm approved for $4,500 a month. I don't think I can do that. And they just stop the process. I always tell them, go back to the lender and say, let's rework the numbers and show me what I could afford at 3,800 or whatever. So what, kind of talk me through a little bit about what that dialogue might look like with you and the potential borrower.
That's a great follow through that we often will find is, we may say what we can qualify you for in bottom line mortgage and or house purchase price, working backwards from your down payment. But a great way to do this is if if you as a home buyer come to us and say, we think we can spend X amount of dollars per month, it's really easy for us loan folks to work that number backwards into, here's what that buys, here's what that mortgage, property taxes, and insurance, the three basic ingredients for housing expense, what that looks like. So if you say you can afford $3,500 a month, it's just a matter of a couple of button presses for us in the computer to go, okay, that's a $800,000 loan or whatever it happens to be. So we oftentimes will try to work into what the consumer can qualify for, and then what really they feel more comfortable doing.
Okay, so they're calling you up and asking you for a pre-approval, essentially. And what's involved in that process? What kind of documents do they need to give you? What happens practically with that?
Well, I'll just kind of explain a little bit of that there are really three different levels of loan approval that we lenders will get a borrower asking about. There's a loan pre-qualification. We may chat with you on the phone for 5, 10, 15 minutes and ask you a little bit about your income, what your credit score look like, what do you have for assets or down payment. And we can pre-qualify you really very quickly. And just means that this is about where your normal purchase price range would be based upon the numbers you're telling me on the phone, or what loan amount you might qualify for. Pre-qualify are kind of the lowest level of this pre-approval process. The next level is an actual pre-approval where we've taken a loan application from you. We've gotten your W-2 paycheck stub. If you're self-employed, we've asked for your tax returns and a few more items. And we really are going through an underwriting process, at least electronically and or with a human, to see if you indeed really do qualify for specific purchase price and or loan amount. And the third level is really the best level that so many consumers are seeing from, I think, a lot of good lenders nowadays. It's an actual loan approval. It's beyond pre-approval. It's a full underwriting process. We've gotten everything we would get in a normal purchase transaction if you've already found a house before you bought the house. And now, as Devin may chat about later on, the newer purchase contract that realtors use, it actually lets them tell a prospective seller what level you've gone through in the loan process, whether you're pre-qualified, pre-approved, or actually approved. And the folks that have the full loan approval maybe can stand a chance of getting an offer against a cash offer, because you're already done. You're ready to go. You close your transaction in maybe a couple of weeks because you've already gone through the full loan process, subject to finding a property. So again, Devin may chat about this later on in the webinar here, but the three levels that we typically see: pre-qual, pre-approval, and full loan approval. Some lenders have different names for that final loan approval, but we like to get to that point. It takes a little longer, a little bit more work on your part, but it's a great way to know what you really can do and get out there and make an offer, a really strong offer, competitive offer.
So it sounds like it's really important to have that pre-approval with your offer.
I think it's almost necessary nowadays. Devin, again, will probably correct me if I'm wrong, but it's even hard to get into the car with a real estate agent or get past the front door with a listing agent if you haven't been through the pre-approval process. It's certainly almost impossible to write an offer on a property if you haven't gone through the process. And we like to try to catch you, weeks or months prior to you writing an offer, so we can head off any issues that might come up in your credit history, or if there's a quirk about the way you get paid, or you've got self-employment, we need to see a P&L or something that's specific to your situation. So the earlier in the process we can get you as a lender prior to you writing an offer, the better off you will be, and the stronger offer you can present to your seller.
So Devin, it sounds like you're working pretty closely with the lender when you're trying to make an offer, that you're going to make sure you've got that pre-approval to attach there, and that you've got a strong relationship with that lender.
Yeah, absolutely. When we start working with a buyer, we do encourage them to obviously speak with a lender, and if they can, do get that pre-approval. The pre-qualification, which is the lowest of the three, that's nice to have, but functionally that doesn't really do much for you. The pre-approval is really what starts opening doors for you in a number of ways. One of which is it allows us if we're representing a buyer, we can essentially go around talking with other agents within our network and say, hey, I've got a buyer that's ready to go. They can write an offer this minute. What do you have that's maybe not publicly advertised yet or coming soon that your seller might be willing to sell early? So it opens a lot of doors for you in that regard. And then also when it comes to the point of making an offer, it's not required to have your pre-approval submitted with your offer, but it's so customary, it's almost become a requirement, because if you're going up against any other buyer who's working with a good agent, they are going to have that pre-approval. And what the pre-approval signals to the seller is that, hey, this buyer's finances have been vetted. If you proceed with this offer, there's a high likelihood that this deal is going to close as planned. So it just gives everyone in the transaction confidence. So for a number of reasons, we really recommend buyers going through that process.
And of course, we want to have you guys be ready to be the strongest buyers you can be. So, that's why we're giving this advice and guidance. So Kevin, what's the cost? Is there a charge to get a pre-approval? What happens when I go to meet with a lender? Do you ask for a fee, or what's the process?
Certainly locally, I'm not aware of any lender that is asking for any sort of fees up front to do the pre-approval process. It's just part of what we do.
Okay.
Typically, we'll ask you to fill out an online loan application or fill out one with us over the phone or in person, whatever works best for your situation. We'll ask you for a couple of paycheck stubs, maybe your last year or two's worth of W-2s, and a self-employed person, a few more items like tax returns, things like that. Really, one of the biggest things we need to see pretty early in the process is your credit report. And there are two types of credit reports that consumers should be aware of. There's something called a soft credit pull and a hard credit pull. And most lenders nowadays in their pre-approval process simply need a soft credit pull. And all that means is it's not a full credit inquiry. It doesn't affect your credit score. It doesn't drive your scores down. You can have as many of them as you want, as opposed to a hard credit pull, which has to be done at some point in time during the full final loan process when you've bought a home. That actually can affect your credit score in dropping you down by 1 or 2 or 3 points every time a lender looks into your credit history. So during the process, if you are chatting with a lender, make sure that they do allow you to only have a soft credit pull for your initial stage of this pre-approval process. That hard credit pull will come later on once you've identified a property and gone into contract or writing an offer or wherever you are in that process.
Well, that's great news, because I hear so many people say, oh, I don't want to go get a pre-approval because it's going to impact my credit negatively. And, I don't want to take that step. So just making sure that you're having a soft credit pull. Okay. Now, credit sounds like it's so important to this process, and I get that. I hear so frequently that people will say, well, I'm trying to get my credit in really good shape before I go see a lender. And I'll say, well, what have you been doing? And frequently I hear them taking steps that actually could send their credit score the wrong way. So I usually say, go talk to a lender. Let's not do anything about your credit until you've seen a lender. Are you comfortable, looking at someone's credit and saying, here are some of the things that might help your credit score? Or, what should someone do in that process when they're trying to improve their score?
Your loan representative is likely to have seen thousands of credit reports over their career and will have lots and lots of advice on what can or cannot hurt you as far as what your credit history looks like. We'll have great advice on what you might want to do in the future as far as if you have a debt that could be paid down to help you qualify for more house purchase price. You may have a medical collection account or some collection account we can help you try to get cleared up. If there are things that are really affecting your credit score greatly, we may refer you to an expert in the business that's all they do is help consumers improve their credit scores. And Corby, we so want to emphasize that credit scores in the loan world can really make or break a consumer's ability to get the best terms available for a mortgage. Even a 1 point difference, it's so black and white and in written in stone. One score versus another score can really affect the consumer's purchase buying power by tens, if not $100,000 in purchase price just by 1 or 2 points in their credit score. So if we can catch you early in the process and help you attack the things that can help lift your scores, that's what we want to do. A lot of times we will say, you know, the best thing to do is we don't want to have any hard inquiries, as we've mentioned in your credit report, during this home buying process. We prefer that you didn't go out and buy a new car or, you know, get new, debt. One of the biggest things that people often will do before they see us is they'll close their credit accounts and think they're cleaning up their credit history by closing out that old Macy's account they haven't used for 10 years or whatever. Don't close any accounts ever. That will often hurt your credit scores more than leaving them open and unused, even an old credit card. The algorithms that come up with consumers' credit scores look at a consumer who has less credit as more risky than a person who has all kinds of open credit accounts. So those types of things are very individual and case specific, but a loan officer that's been around for a long time is going to have a lot of strong, I mean, really strong advice on what you should or shouldn't do as far as fixing credit or not fixing credit at all. The consumer scores that you see on your credit card statements or you might get when you go out and shop for a car are not the same as what a mortgage lender is going to see. We all are required to use a different scoring model than some of the other kind of lesser scoring models that are out there. So if you think you may have a 750 credit score on a consumer credit card statement, it may be different than what we see as a lender. So it's important that we get a real soft pull credit report early in the process. Probably as much or more than anything else that we do is getting that credit report pretty early in chatting with you.
Well, it sounds like it's another good reason to go see a lender sooner rather than later. Just, if it does take some time to get your credit score to a place where you need it to be, you can take those steps and have that guidance from the lender. Devin, do you often find that someone is ready to buy sooner than they might think?
It can happen, yes, specifically if you haven't gone to a lender and just checked what your affordability might be today. I think there's a lot of, rumors or hearsay floating around on the internet about you need X amount of down payment before you even start looking. And so I find that it's beneficial for buyers to really get some clarity, with a lender first and foremost. Another scenario where someone might be ready sooner than they think is, if they're not aware of some of the programs that are out there for first-time home buyers, through the city of Carp, through the city of Santa Barbara, through the county of Santa Barbara, through the state even. There's more programs out there than you might imagine. And granted, those coffers ebb and flow, so you got to check in on the financial standing of some of those programs. But I've had clients, I know other realtors have had clients who weren't aware of those programs. They checked into them, and boom, there was 75,000 there that could help them with their down payment, or there was 100,000. So those are scenarios where someone could be ready before they might think that they are.
That's great. Kevin, have you seen that too, that you've met with someone and they didn't think they were ready to buy and they could have been ready to buy maybe 6 months ago? Or
more often than you would think, folks are able to buy sooner than they think they are. There are so many new loan programs that are out there, especially for first-time home buyers, or the way that the lenders define a first-time home buyer as somebody who hasn't had an interest in a property in the past 3 years. There are so many more programs than we've ever had that are helping folks get into mortgages that we didn't have 2, 3, 4 years ago, even a few months ago. As Devin alluded to, there are many down payment assistance programs. There are programs that are very county and zip code specific to an area for a maximum income level that might allow a consumer to have a better terms than even a consumer who's owned a home before. I've been shocked at the number of people that are getting better interest rates that are brand new to the housing market than a consumer who's owned 5 houses before. So there's a lot that's available to consumers that I don't think the media can portray or has portrayed out there.
that's great to know. So in both the counties of Ventura and the county of Santa Barbara, there's some really great down payment assistance programs. And so, good to get with your lender and find out what those are. And you could be in that readiness position much sooner than you think. So we encourage you to take that step. Devin, so at what point should a potential home buyer meet with a real estate agent?
So similar to what Kevin mentioned earlier, there is no charge to strike up a conversation, with a realtor. It'd be nice if we could just go hourly right away, like an attorney or something. But no, part of what we do is essentially just consulting with people. You could be the most beginner person on the planet, or you could be very savvy. Where we take all comers. Essentially, there's an initial conversation to kind of understand, what's your background, what's your goals, where are you trying to go, and what is real estate, what role is real estate playing, in that journey. So yeah, there's no charge. We're happy to sit down and if it starts to gain momentum and you start to get that pre-approval, okay, then we go to the next level. We can really physically start going to look at properties with you, advising on which ones might be a better fit for your situation, and all of a sudden you're an escrow on something, and eventually you're a homeowner. So no issue with folks reaching out right off the bat, and you won't be charged, and we're happy to meet more people. So
Good. That's good to know. How do you select an agent? Are there certain questions or guidance, or how does someone start that process?
well, everyone has their own strategy. Some people go with maybe a friend or a family member who has their license. Some people maybe go with someone you saw on TV, or on Instagram, or maybe through word of mouth through your network. That's another popular way. So typically I would just advise someone to go with someone with a proven track record, who's currently active, currently in the business, because things change so quickly, whether it's the forms or just the procedures. Those change all the time. So it's good to have someone who's currently active doing business. And then, there's a personality element to this as well. You want to mesh, because this agent is going to play a very big role in your life for whatever weeks or months that you're shopping for a home. You become very closely linked, so you want to make sure it's someone you can work closely with, and then ultimately just someone that you can trust, because this is a very, it can be a stressful process, and there's a lot on the line. So just someone that you can trust.
Mhm. Good suggestions. Yeah, and I guess someone local too. I mean, so tempting to, my mother's an agent in Boston, and she can help me through the process. It's like, no, let's get someone local who knows the market and can really help you negotiate for that. Kevin, do you have anything to add in terms of selecting an agent?
Well, again, it's often from word of mouth from your friends or family that have been through the process, hopefully before, co-workers or whatever the case may be. And Corby, you just hit the nail on the head as far as local. Devin will probably reinforce this, but when we go back to this market where there's multiple offers on houses, and these listing agents will see 10, 15 offers per house, they tend to lean toward the consumers that are represented by a local agent, Santa Barbara, Ventura County, versus somebody who from Boston or San Diego or wherever the case may be, because they know that they can reach out and talk to that person and know them, know the reputations on the line, because they are in the local marketplace. So I think those are the things that I would look to if I were a buyer in our areas, is using a local realtor in a transaction.
Right. So Devin, the role of the real estate agent, I mean, I think that, we tend to think of, well, they're going to drive you around and show you some homes, and you're going to find the house, but it's way bigger than that. In fact, you may even find your home on the internet. So what else does the real estate agent bring to the table in terms of the value that they bring to the home buyer?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of TV shows out there that have really boiled it down to, looking pretty, and then you get this crazy commission check, right? And there's so many steps in between. Realtors wear many hats. We're not just sending you a property, although there are agents maybe that do that. But we're trying to mesh your wants and your needs with our knowledge of the market to try to pinpoint some neighborhoods or some specific homes that would be a good fit for you. We are, holding your hand through this process, not just the house hunt itself, but once you get into escrow on a property, we're advising you. You know, there's many forks in the road. So if you take the left fork, this could happen. If you take the right fork, this could happen. So there's a lot of you know, managing fear, managing expectations. This can be an emotional and challenging process. So we do a lot there. And then there's just the fact that we play liaison between not just the buyer, but the listing agent, the seller, the escrow officer, title, all different types of home inspectors, you know, and then the paperwork. So many different elements. I kind of liken it to we're going on a road trip and you got your car checked out with Kevin, you know, the mechanic, first things first, and our car's good to go. And then we hop in and the realtor is your GPS. We're planning the lunch stop. We're planning out the sites to see. We're booking the hotel at the end. There's so many things along the way. So that's how you can kind of think of it.
Yeah, good analogy. And I imagine too, it's just so helpful to have the agent suggesting or recommending what price to offer. I mean, so often you think, well, if I offer full price, I'm going to get the house. If the home's very well priced, maybe you've got to go over asking. I would think it'd be very hard just for a layperson to know what they might offer if they want to be competitive.
Yeah, that's certainly a part of it. Although ultimately we never pick the price for an offer. That's always, you know, on the buyer because they have to sleep well, you know, at night, whether they win or lose. But part of what we do is we dig for as much information as we can get, right? So we're on the phone with that other agent where we have our knowledge of, you know, what happened at these three sales nearby. How did those play out, right? And so we're just feeding as much information as we can to the buyer who then ultimately will make the decision on how much they want to offer. But a lot of our job is giving them as much information as possible.
About the market value. And that's a good point. You should never be pushed into offering more than you are comfortable with by someone saying, hey, you know, this is what it's going to take. Maybe that's not going to be the house for you. But that's a good point in terms of just that really strong market knowledge, what something's worth. So how important is it, Devin, for someone to have their own agent rather than maybe say using the same agent as the seller?
Yeah, I think it's critical. There are buyers who think that they will get an inside track, maybe just going to the listing agent who is representing the seller. And that in some cases could be, you know, if there's an agent who maybe, you know, works the deal out so that it's cheaper potentially. But I'm always in favor of advising that people have their own representation because you get someone who's has a fiduciary responsibility to navigate this whole process with your best interests at heart. If there's only one agent and they're representing buyer and seller, well, you can see how that could be a problem. If I'm representing a seller, my job is to get the highest price. And if I'm representing the buyer, my job is to get the lowest price. And I can't do both of those at the same time, right? If I'm the only agent in the deal. So always advise people to get representation of their own. And typically that doesn't cost you any more. The commission is sometimes split between each half of the deal. So in essence, it's not costing you more to have someone in your own corner.
Good to know. Now, there's been a lot of in the news lately about upcoming changes to buyers agents agreements. Devin, how will that be impacting potential home buyers? Any advice for them? Any thoughts about that topic?
Yeah, so just to back up, this is a class action suit that was born in, I believe, Missouri, where they're alleging that you know, commissions were not being advertised, that commissions were not being or were essentially being price fixed. Now that's out of state, right? California has always been on the very cutting edge of all of these things. So if you ever sign an agreement to sell your house with an agent, on page one, it's going to say in bold letters how much commission you're paying to that agent, right? And on that same page, it's going to say in bold how much of that commission goes to the buyer's agent, right? And so we've always been very upfront about those, which is what other states have not been. And the other element about price fixing on commissions, I mean, commissions have always been negotiable. Yes, they've settled into a certain range in California and in Santa Barbara specifically, but that's always been negotiable. So as far as we're concerned, there's much more in the rumor mill about changes than there actually will be to the process for us. So as of right now, business as usual, and we'll see how things shake out potentially in June when this settlement could potentially be final.
Okay, but still, regardless, it's a great idea to have your own representation and to not try to go this on your own. It's a huge expense, and the real estate agent brings so much to the table. The seller is going to have an agent representing them, and it's a good idea for the buyer to have an agent representing them as well. I think that's just a really wise decision when you are making an important decision like buying a home. So great. So, well, let's go to some questions. Kim, what do you see in the question box?
Yeah, we have some questions here. So the first question is, who would sort of be the best advisor with first-time home buyer programs? Would you start with the lender or the agent or yourself? Who would be the best advisor there?
Well, I wouldn't try to research it all on your own as a potential buyer, because that research has already been done for you. So Kevin, let you start on that one, and Devin, if you want to tag on to that afterwards. I think that's a really good question.
Well, as we mentioned earlier, there are so many more first-time home buyer programs out there than have ever been offered before. If you're working with a knowledgeable, local lender, most of us are going to be able to guide you on what's out there. As Devin mentioned earlier, some of them come and go fairly rapidly as far as whether it's the state of California offering them or a local community offering down payment assistance or special ways to qualify for more purchase price. There are very specific zip code types of first-time homebuyer programs and county-specific area median income calculations that a good lender can do that we have access to that I don't think the other folks might be able to interpret as well. So lender is probably your best resource to try to find these types of things. But some of you also work for employers that have very specific programs. Cottage Health Systems and UCSB in particular both have their own very advantageous types of programs that a lender can work with in conjunction with your employer to help either get you better terms or more purchase power.
And all these first-time home buyer programs, you can use the Coastal Housing Partnership savings along with that. So these things can definitely be layered, as well as most, if there's an employer program, they can usually use the Coastal Housing Partnership program as well. So don't feel like it's one or the other. Devin, do you have anything to add to that, or is that?
No, I mean, I tend to defer to, Kevin and other lenders on the financial stuff, but I have clients that have used these programs as well. So the links are at my fingertips if anybody needs them. So yeah, however you want to do it.
Great.
The next question is, what is a viable or good credit score number to baseline as good standing for a loan?
Kevin, that's yours.
That's fine. Not necessarily a one-size-fits-all answer because some programs require higher credit scores than others. It depends on whether you're an FHA, VA type of loan versus a Fannie, Freddie conforming loan versus a non-conforming jumbo loan. So, in general, we're always, thrilled if you have a credit score in the 700s. It's certainly not imperative. In fact, folks can get down into the 500s and still be able to get qualified for a mortgage. So but the higher your score is, the closer to 730, 740, 750, the better the terms would typically be. Also maybe the lesser down payment programs are a little more available to the folks that have better credit scores. But again, that's why we want to encourage you to chat with the lender in advance so we can guide you on what's going to be available with your credit score. And if you're only a point or two away from the next level, we can help you boost that score up to the more qualifying ability or better loan terms. So
I think it's so important to know that your credit score is not a fixed number. It is very fluid, it's a dynamic number, and you can improve your score. So sometimes people think, oh, I don't have good credit, you'll never have good credit. No, that is not true. It's a myth. You can always improve your score, and a lender's a good one to help you suggest to you what you can do to improve that score and to make a big difference there. So yes, go ahead, Kevin.
Corby, I'll add on top of what you just said is, many lenders now have the ability through their credit bureau to do what if scenarios. If this car loan is paid down, or if this student loan goes away, or if this medical collection account is cleared up, here's what that will likely do to your score. So these newer scoring models are out there that we're able to, hey, what happens if we do this? It's pretty cool what we can do that we couldn't do 5 or 10 years ago in the business, where we can now have predictive scores on manipulating one thing versus another. So again, a good loan officer can walk you through that.
That's awesome. Great.
Yeah, I like that. The next question is, are first-time home buyers, a first-time home buyer programs available to those that do have 20% down?
First-time homebuyer programs are available to everybody who fits within the first-time homebuyer definitions. And again, it's very loose on what a first-time homebuyer is. Technically, you're a first-time homebuyer for most loan programs if you haven't owned interest in residential property in the past 3 years, and only one of the borrowers in the transaction needs to meet that definition to make them all first-time homebuyers. So if we have a couple that one's owned a house and one has not, they're both first-time homebuyers in the minds of the loan definition for first-time homebuyers. So it's a very broad and loose definition. It even boggles our mind sometimes to think, wow, this is fantastic. I have had transactions where we dragged in an adult child or somebody else who is a first-time homebuyer to help us qualify for these special types of programs that perhaps somebody else that was already in the transaction couldn't have. So there's some fun creative things out there now that can help us work toward those. And again, to answer your question, you don't have to have there's no down payment maximums to meet these first-time home buyers or minimums. You could put 90% down and still be a first-time home buyer. It's all about just that one definition. It doesn't always help, and sometimes it doesn't make any sense to go for that program, but oftentimes it does give us increased better interest rates and terms to work with.
Great. And then the next question is, so would the first step to be to meet with a lender to see how much you can afford and determine if there are any additional financial items you would need to take care of? And I would say the answer to that is yes, but you can elaborate. Kevin.
Yeah, again, if we lenders can get you early in your thought process of wanting to get out there and get ready to buy a house, we can help you first of all figure out what you likely can afford and or qualify for, but also how can we get you the best terms? What can we do to, hey, you've got a bonus coming, let's see what that bonus is going to be. If you know what it's going to be, I can maybe average that into your income and give us more buying power. I should have mentioned earlier, one of the things that we will often see is a consumer will come to us after they've bought a new car or they've gone out and got a larger debt. And if you learn nothing else from it today, the most important thing to remember is every $100 in consumer debt payment you have takes away from you about $15,000 of house buying power. So if you went out and right before you buying a house, you went and got a $400 or $500 a month car payment, we've evaporated or taken away about $60,000 to $75,000 of house or mortgage that you would have qualified for before. So if we can catch you in the process, we can get you on that path to making sure that don't go, get this new debt if we really want to buy a house, and or if you have credit card, debt or student loan debt or car payment debt that maybe we can manipulate in advance to help you have more buying power. That $100 to a $15,000 figure really translates to so many consumers affording more house than they ever would have known. You may have a car that has 15 payments left, and I may say, hey, if we're going to buy a house in the next couple of months, let's pay down that car loan to less than 10 payments remaining. Installment debt, we lenders don't have to count if there's 10 or fewer payments left on it. So if you're in the home stretch on a consumer debt, like a car payment or a fixed installment loan, maybe a student loan, things like that, we may say, hey, I'd rather have that paid down than have more down payment funds. So those are the types of things that we can do in advance if we can see it early enough in the process, although they can also be done during a purchase transaction to help us qualify for more.
Kevin, I'm glad you brought that up about the car payment. I hear so many people say, oh, I only have 8 payments left on my truck. I'm going to just pay that off so I don't have that debt. And so many people don't know that you're not even going to count that as a lender if they only have 8 left, so that they just used up a chunk of their closing costs or their down payment. So some of these things that, consumers are doing to try to improve their credit or their, readiness position will not accomplish that. So definitely check with a lender before you take any big moves like that.
Great. Next question is, how big of an impact does student loan debt, if you're up to date on the payments, make on the home buying process?
Guessing that question's for me. Student loan debt definitely counts in your qualifying debt to income qualifying ratios. And many consumers right now don't have payments on their credit report. So we lenders will have to follow lending guidelines. One of the Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac have different rules. One may hit us for 1% of your bottom line amount as a payment. Another hits us for 0.5%. There are different rules for different loan programs. And that's, again, where a good loan officer will kind of move you toward the loan program that's going to help you overcome your student loan debt if it is affecting your ability. But it is probably one of the biggest numbers we see out there from consumers right now for buying property is student loan debt that we don't want you paying it down necessarily because it might get forgiven with some of the newer programs that the government's trying to put out right now. So, again, we may say, well, let's attack a credit card debt or a car loan debt instead, because your student loan debt might go away anyway, but we do have to count it. And again, a lender will guide you through what's the best way to overcome it if it's insurmountable to you.
Great. And then Devin, maybe you can answer this. If it's their advice you would give regarding purchasing a manufactured home or a condo versus a traditional house?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest differentiators between those two categories, and I'm going to say, single family homes over here and condos and manufactured over here, is along with your mortgage payment, you're going to have, essentially in a condo, you're going to have homeowners dues, which are an additional monthly expense. In a manufactured home, you're going to be calling what's called space rent. There are a few parks where you own the land underneath, but generally you're renting the space that you're putting the mobile home on top of. So there are pretty exorbitant costs sometimes that go along with condos or manufactured homes that when you do the math, maybe it makes more sense for you to be over in the single family home where you don't have those additional expenses, or you can maybe buy something a little bit nicer because those monthly dues aren't eating away at your housing costs.
Great.
Oh, Kevin, did you have something to add on that?
Just to amplify what Devin just pointed out, when we do have consumers, Devin and I will have buyers, looking at a condo versus a house. I'll go back to that $100 a month translates to $15,000 more in purchase power. A homeowners association for a condo may be $500-600 a month, which a house wouldn't have. So when you're comparing purchase prices of a house versus condo, typically you do have potentially more purchase power toward a house than you do on a condo. So it's not an apples to apples comparison. A $900,000 condo might translate to a $975,000 house, depending on the homeowners association fee that the condo has, that the house does not. And then one more thing on a house versus a condo. Typically, a home will have slightly better loan terms than a condo with 20% down. But once you cross over 25% down payment, then the house and condo are about the same terms. But single family residences do get rewarded with just slightly better terms than condos in some loan programs.
It's good to know.
And then this was, one person is saying that there seems like there's a lot of out of the area investors coming in to make substantial offers on property in the county in the last few years.
Devin, what are you
Yeah.
seeing there?
Yeah, I would say that was more prevalent when we were in the heart of the pandemic. You know, we were seeing numbers depending on what segment of the market you're looking at. Sometimes like 50% of buyers would be out of the area, right? Because people weren't tethered to these office jobs. So if you're making good money and you don't have to live in any specific area, most people are going to gravitate towards somewhere nice like Santa Barbara, specifically when we're in a health crisis like that, where being outdoors is something you really want to try to do. So we saw more of that during the pandemic. We still see a fair bit of it. You know, now it could be anything like 25, maybe 35%. But I would say the biggest wave of that is gone. And in some cases, we're seeing folks that are being called back to the office and they're selling to go back to their original market. So there's a little bit of a give and take there. I know it's frustrating if you've lived in town for quite some time for someone to just come in from out of town and scoop something up. But I think that just underscores why it's all the more important to, you know, start getting your ducks in a row, start talking with a Kevin or myself, or, you know, if you already have a team in place, and really be prepared so that you're doing everything you can to compete against, you know, any buyer, especially if they're out of town.
Great.
Is there a fee or contract in place when meeting with the lender?
Kevin.
Not that I'm aware of that any lender is asking, especially in the pre-approval process, for you to pay a fee to get pre-approved. If you're further down the road and you're in a purchase transaction and you've gotten maybe a hard credit pull, and your lender may charge you for your credit report at that point in time, and you may end up going with a different lender. That's the only instance I can think of that would be any sort of fee that a lender would charge. You know, if you've had an appraisal done in a purchase transaction and then you end up not following through with the purchase transaction, or it falls apart, or whatever, you move to a different lender, you may end up paying for the appraisal, because the appraiser is an independent party that has to be paid for their part of the process. But I'm not aware of any lender fees that are out there for a consumer to get started in this process.
In fact, that should be an alert to you that, you know, if someone is charging that, you know, why are they doing that? And maybe that's not the individual that you want to use.
Next question is, I was told by a friend that currently a first-time homebuyer program, there's currently a first-time homebuyer program with up to 150K available for those as long as your parents never owned a home. Is that true?
Is that the dream for all?
It
that's
is the
Dream for
Cal Housing Authority program. It is a lottery-based system that folks can apply with pretty much any lender to get on this lottery waiting list. And it's similar to the one that they had last year that lasted all of 8 days. The money dried up very, very quickly. So not a lot of consumers were able to participate in, or, you know, were able to do it. This new one, the lottery system, it just started a week or two ago, and I haven't heard of anybody that's actually gotten very far in the process. But it's pretty hard to meet this "your parents can't have owned a home" requirement, or and they actually are hiring investigators, from what I'm hearing. The Cal HFA program people are, you can't just say my folks didn't own a home and I meet these requirements. They actually go and investigate that. So yeah, it's out there, but I personally haven't heard of folks that have successfully gotten through the process yet.
It's my understanding that if you do get accepted by the lottery, that you have 90 days to get into escrow on a home. So there's a pretty short time frame in terms of making that happen.
Next question is, do manufactured homes, senior living qualify for the first-time homebuyer programs?
Me, yes. In some cases, yes. Again, very property and or borrower specific answers here. So I can't give you a one size fits all, but yes, in some cases, those will fit into the available first time home buyer programs.
Is it recommended to get to just get into the market or to get a starter house or wait and continue to save until you can afford your dream home?
You guys both might have a response to that.
Yeah, do you want
Kevin,
to
you
start,
first.
Kevin?
You first,
Um,
Evan.
Okay. I think the general thinking is to sort of use a sort of climb the ladder approach, right? The time that you take to save up the money that it would take you to get into your dream home, the market might run away from you in that time frame. Certainly, we've seen that in the last few years where a lot of properties went up by say 50%, right? So if you were playing the waiting game, well, that goal line just moved further and faster away than you were running. So I think depending on your circumstances, and everyone's different, sometimes there is a lot of merit to simply getting your foot in the market and building that equity through appreciation, through paying down the principal on your loan. And then if that time in your life comes along where you can step up to the next property and get closer to your dream home, then it can be more doable. So generally, I'd probably be in favor of climbing the ladder, but everybody's different. If you want to just save it all as much as you can for one day, that perfect property, then that's your prerogative as well.
Kevin, anything to add or?
Well, more often than not, from the folks that we've seen over the many years of being around, that the first home is not the forever home necessarily. We rarely get to have that forever home in our first purchase transaction, but it does allow us to have a big savings account that we're paying into in our monthly payment. Part of your payment, of course, is paying down the mortgage balance, but also the home's appreciation that Devin alluded to is perhaps making you a larger down payment for that next home purchase and or final home purchase. Almost every person I've worked with in the past 30 something years, their first home was not their forever house. It was a stepping stone onto the next place.
Wow, I love this engaged audience. So many questions. We have two more. Last one is pros and cons of working with a financial representative like Kevin versus a credit union or other bank or lender.
Kevin,
We're all fishing off the same dock. I think it's as far as when you get a loan, most loans in the US are in most areas of the US are going to be targeted towards Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA or VA types of loans. And rates don't vary very much on those types of loan programs. Where we do see some variation is when you're in the non-conforming jumbo loan category. So the larger loan amounts where lender A may have better terms than lender B. When you're shopping for lenders, a credit union versus a bank, there are three types of really institutions. There's the brick and mortar banks like a Bank of America or a Chase or a Wells Fargo or a local credit union. There are independent mortgage bankers such as us and other banks that are out there that we lend off of our own funds, but we don't have the corner building that you go in and make a deposit to or have a checking or savings account. And then there are mortgage brokers. That's the other third category that are phenomenal. Some really good people that are in Coastal Housing Partnership network as well that they're brokering the loan between perhaps a brick and mortar or independent mortgage banker. It really comes down to you finding the loan officer in the institution that best fits kind of your needs, that you feel like you have a good relationship with, that you can tell everything to. And I think I've said this before to Corby and the other, and we've done these webinars and coastal housing fairs. You're going to get to know your loan officer and your realtor incredibly well. My closest friends over the past 30 years were formerly clients. That's how well you get to know them. So whether you choose a credit union or a bank or a mortgage broker, it's going to come down to the personality that feels like it's not transactional. It's really all about you and making sure that you get into the best situation that you can get yourself into.
Okay. Kim, any more, or is that it?
Last one. Do your network of lenders assist with home buying outside of California?
We, in terms of Coastal Housing Partnership, our programs work for Santa Barbara County and Ventura County. The lenders that we work with generally work with for all of California, but they're not offering us savings for closing costs. And then it varies in terms of who works out of state. You just would have to check with them.
Yeah. I have put the information for the home buying fair that's coming up on April 30th. It's in the chat. So you can RSVP for that and join us.
Yeah, we
Both,
encourage you to attend that. Yeah, it's in
Yeah.
2 weeks from this evening, and both Kevin and Devin will be at the fair, and you can spend more time talking with them. We'll have other agents and lenders there as well as many home buying seminars throughout the evening, as well as free supper. So hope you can attend that. And Kim has, as she mentioned, put that information in the chat. So check that out. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us today. And Devin, Kevin, thank you for your expertise and sharing that with us. And we encourage you all to take that first step toward becoming a homeowner. So thanks for joining us.